Hello and welcome. Tonight, federal government agrees to set up a tripartite committee to study the dynamics of the minimum wage as the Trade Union Congress TUC insists on reversal of prices while discussions continue. Lagos State Governor Babajide appeals to the Nigerian Labour Congress to suspend its planned strike over fuel subsidy removal. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project SERAP asked President Bola Tinubu to probe missing $2.1 billion and 3.1 trillion naira allegedly for subsidy payments or face legal action. And fighters opposed to the government in Moscow say they have captured some Russian soldiers in Belgorod near the border with Ukraine. The federal government has announced that it will consider a list of demands from the TUC, which includes minimum wage and a look at the practicability of the demands. Now, the spokesperson for the federal government, Mr. NDLEA, told State House correspondents after the meeting, which lasted for about 3 hours, that most fundamentally the president will constitute a tripartite committee to include states, the organized labor that is, and the private sector to study the dynamics of the minimum wage augmentation to reach an amicable conclusion. He adds that the absence of the NLC does not translate to an isolation of the group in the discussions, but that the federal government is making efforts to reach them as the parties agree to reconvene on Tuesday, some 24 hours before a scheduled strike by the NLC.
We are very happy to announce to Nigerians that this engagement has been very productive. The TUC that attended today's meeting presented a list of demands, and those demands we have studied and we are going to present to Mr. President for his consideration. For those demands, we can announce to Nigerians that a lot of the items on the list are not impracticable. What we need to do is to study the numbers very well, and then we have asked the TUC to also give us a leeway to consult, very exhaustively and come back on Tuesday, reconvene on Tuesday to actually look at the numbers, the viability, practicability of all the items that have been presented to us. Now, most important, top priority on the list, which the government is also looking at very seriously, and the president has announced before, is the issue of the minimum wage, which the labor movement has demanded as a consequence of this removal of the consequential impact of the removal of subsidy. So government is looking at that, and Mr. President is most likely going to constitute a tripartite committee. That is a committee of federal government and including the states, then the organized labor on the other part, and the private sector. Now, this is a tripartite arrangement. It will be a committee that will study all the dynamics of a wage increase, the percentages, the numbers, and the categories that will be affected. So by Tuesday, when we come back to reconvene and meet with the TUC again, the labor movement, we should have very concrete items to present to the world. But the most important thing for today is that we are making appreciable progress with the labor.
Meanwhile, the TUC has maintained that the federal government, in the interest of social dialogue, revert the price of fuel while discussions continue. The president of the TUC, Festus Osifo, said the union is hopeful as the federal government promises to look into their demands, top of which is a review of the current minimum wage, among others.
We have presented a list of our demands to them, and they received it in good faith, that they will go back to their principal and come back to us on Tuesday. So we are hopeful that the demand that we have presented it will be reviewed in the best interest of Nigerian workers and the entire Nigerian masses. It's because they are going back to Mr. President. So we also think that we should give them that benefit of doubt so that we will convey this meeting again on Tuesday. So we've, and topmost in our demand was clearly stated as well that for utmost good faith and in the interest of social dialogue, that they should revert back the pump price while discussion continues.
Meanwhile, the Lagos State Governor Babajide is appealing to the Nigeria Labour Congress not to embark on the nationwide strike scheduled for Wednesday. Governor Sanwo-Olu, who spoke to journalists after the post-inauguration Thanksgiving service at the Cathedral Church of Christ in Marina, says the subsidy removal is in the interest of all, and the president should be supported because he means well for the country.
To wish and plead with our citizens, even as NLC is I say to us they want to go on strike, it's not the time for strike. You see, the point is, during the campaign trail, every of our presidential candidates, 13 or 14 of them, all of them did say that the first thing they're going to do is to remove the subsidy. So what has changed? What has the current president said, or what has he done that is different from any of the other aspirants could have done? So, I mean, we need to be very patient. He's not even done a week, right? And so let us talk to ourselves and say that we shouldn't turn this thing political. Let's wait and support this man. He's not done a week on the job. Let him go and reflect, and at the subnational level, we're ready to support him. So the point is not, any strike will not solve anything. It will certainly will not be the issue. The point will be, how are we going to ensure that there is a turnaround in our economy, that we can live. He has mentioned something around, a better wage. We have started that in Lagos. We're proud to ourselves that we started in January. So other parts of the country can also do the same. Right? We don't need to wait for national government. We just need to reflect, what the challenges are in our country, and let's be able to solve it. So I want to plead with the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, right? And it shouldn't turn into a political thing, because we're beginning to see that. And the man or the leadership should indeed, they should know that they are leading a pack of people, and they need to restrain themselves.
We have more on the post-inauguration Thanksgiving service for Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State. Still on the subsidy debate, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, is asking President Bola Tinubu to set up a panel of inquiry to probe the alleged missing and unaccounted for $2.1 billion and 3.1 trillion naira public funds of oil revenues budgeted as fuel subsidy payments between 2016 and 2019. The amount is set to be documented by the Auditor General of the Federation. The rights group asked the president to name and shame anyone suspected to be responsible for the alleged corruption in the use of oil revenues and the management of public funds budgeted as fuel subsidy. SERAP says the federal government must ensure their effective prosecution as well as the full recovery of any proceeds of crime. In the letter by SERAP, the group explains that there is a legitimate public interest in ensuring justice and accountability for these allegations, and that there will be no sustainable economic growth without accountability for these human rights crimes. The removal of fuel subsidy in the country appears to be taking its toll on commercial activities in Kano as business owners lament its impact. The prices of goods and services continue to go up as transporters struggle to remain in business due to lack of passengers. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyasu reports.
Ever since President Bola Tinubu announced the removal of fuel subsidy, Kano State in northwest Nigeria is experiencing a sharp increase in the price of premium motor spirit, PMS.
Since the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy, here in Kano State, northwest Nigeria, fuel is sold at 540 to 560 per litre. And this is having an effect on the economic activities in the state.
Mama Nyara, a mother of 4 and a small business owner on Post Office Road, is among those affected. Her business heavily relies on a generator to power her equipment.
It affects us so much, especially with the business centers, because the light is not constant. Now we will buy fuel, 1 litre, 540 naira. You bought a litre, 540, you photocopy 50 naira, no gain.
How much
were you
doing the photocopy before?
Before we are doing it 20 naira, 10 naira, but now we do 50 naira.
At the Kano Line Motor Park, vehicles are sitting idle as only a few passengers who have urgent travel needs come by.
The problem we're having now is that passengers don't come. Even if they come and we tell them the cost of transportation, they will now withdraw.
While many others lament the situation, there is a glimmer of hope for Ahmed Gaya, a bicycle seller at Wapa Market, who sees a potential benefit in the subsidy removal.
Before, we sell 1 or 2, but now we can sell 6 or more, and we're hoping the market will be better.
Some economic experts believe the removal of fuel subsidy has a negative impact on the country's economy.
Activities are going low. In economics, what we want is a number of economic activities. Once you see economic activities going down, it means something is wrong with the economy.
With the removal of fuel subsidy, the economic landscape in Kano is taking a new shape, with increased costs affecting businesses and reduced passenger turnout impacting the transportation sector. However, some individuals like Ahmed Gaya are finding opportunities within this challenging situation. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Away from the fuel subsidy issue, well, Taraba State Governor Abu Kafa says his government will probe his predecessor's administration through audit of various ministries and departments of the state to ensure transparency and justice. Speaking at an engagement with journalists in the state, the governor, who also declared a state of emergency on the state's educational sector, is maintaining that 80% of his cabinet will be made up of young people. According to him, his administration will execute projects based on priorities of communities.
You have auditors in the government, so it is their responsibility to carry out this function continuously. So everybody will be set on motion to play their role as they are supposed to play, to help us, the incoming, to be able to drive through. So where we need to ask questions or probe, we will. What do you want to do? You want to know whether things were done rightly or wrongly so that you can correct. You also need to know how people were able to make mistakes so that you too avoid such mistakes. So all these are very important when it comes to governance. So I'll provide a leadership that will make sure that the right thing is done, also make sure that we'll correct whatever is wrong. So I want to assure you that probing, inquiring, finding out are all necessary things that are required to be done.
In part 2 after the break, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres appoints President of the African Development Bank, Nigeria's Akumi Adesina, and 21 other leaders to spearhead global fight against malnutrition. To join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government agrees to set up a tripartite committee to study the dynamics of the minimum wage as the Trade Union Congress insists on reversal of prices while discussions continue. Lagos State Governor Babajide appeals to the Nigerian Labour Congress to suspend its planned strike over fuel subsidy removal. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, asked President Tinubu to probe missing $2.1 billion and 3.1 trillion naira allegedly for subsidy payments or face legal action. And fighters opposed to the government in Moscow say they have captured some Russian soldiers in Belgorod near the border with Ukraine. Let's take you back, and there's more on the fuel subsidy removal issue. A member of the federal government negotiating team and a former president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Adams Oshomole, has been speaking on how the federal government can deploy the savings from the fuel subsidy removal to improve the living conditions of Nigerians. Mr. Oshomole, who was speaking tonight on our program, Sunday Politics, said there are a number of things the government can do with the proceeds.
If Nigeria is going to save about 6 or 7 trillion by withdrawing subsidy, then there is no question that you can take part of that and put it in the wage sector. Because those savings will go to the federation account, which will be distributed to the 3 tiers of government. So every tier of government, we have more money, and therefore should be able to meet the consequential increase in wages. Because of government, the primary purpose of government is the welfare of the people. So you cannot expect to, you can't take decisions that you know will impact on cost of living without thinking through how you will deal with the consequences. And I'm happy that President Tinubu has said he's ready. He believes that there is need to review the national minimum wage.
This time last week, he was still called president-elect. Well, as you and I know, that is now history. Well, the question now is, will Nigeria's history books be kind to President Bola Tinubu? Tonight, Babajide Ogusowo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, is right here to share insights on the metrics that could be used to judge the new government of President Bola Tinubu. It's great to have you again on News at 10.
Ayo. Man, I hope you'll be kind to me with time tonight.
Let's hope so. So let's start off very quickly. And of course, more often than not, we hear politicians say that governance is not a sprint, but a marathon. Now, looking at it, is it too early to know how well the government has started, or what metrics should be used to determine the president's performance? Let's start with that.
So it's really not too early. The president has set his own standard, the measure by which he wants to be judged. And even though he still hasn't picked up the gift we presented to him last week,
the Usain Bolt picture.
The Usain Bolt picture, that's still waiting for him to allow me to hang in his room. 1:08 p.m. on Monday, time froze. 1:08 p.m., the president made his biggest economic promise to Nigerians. 1:08 p.m., Ayo, the president set the standard in which he wants to be measured.
He set the ball rolling, or hit the ground running.
Exactly at 1:08 p.m., he made that promise, 6% annual economic growth rate. And so, just as we did last week, we want the president to keep this clock by his bedside. 1:08 p.m., the time he promised us 6% economic growth rate. Why is this important? In this statement, there's good and there's bad news. 6%, good news, because that is 2 times faster than our present economic growth rate. Good news. But 6%, Ayo, is also bad news. Bad news because it is 2 times slower than our economic growth rate in 2002. So let's take a look at our economic growth history in the Fourth Republic since 1999 to date, to exactly look at how does the president want to be judged and to look at the challenges he faces. Again, what is in front of us? Under President Obasanjo and Atiku, the economy grew by 14.6% in 2002. That was the best economic rate under President Obasanjo and Atiku. Until date, it still remains the fastest we have grown since we returned to democracy in 1999. 14.6%. That record has not been broken. Under President Yar'Adua and Vice President Goodluck Jonathan, the best they achieved as economic growth rate measured by GDP, 9.5%. That was in 2010. And under President Goodluck Jonathan and Vice President Sambo, the best economic growth rate they achieved was in 2014, 7.5%. Between 2015 to date, the fastest economic growth rate President Buhari, former President Buhari, and Vice President Osinbajo achieved 3.4%. In simple terms, if you look at what's in front of you, as we've had new presidents, economic growth, the fastest they've achieved has gotten worse. 14.6% under President Obasanjo, 9.5% under President Yar'Adua, that was his best rate. 7.5% was Goodluck Jonathan's best rate in 2014, and President Buhari's best economic growth rate, 3.4% in 2021. The good news, again, President Tinubu says he wants to double that rate. However, if we look at where we were in 2002, that is still bad news. So it depends on the perspective you look at it. Good news from our current situation, bad news from what we've historically have achieved.
All right, so definitely the President Bola Tinubu is already in office, getting things sorted out as we speak, or we want to believe so. He has a whole lot on his table. But on the day of his inauguration speech, Babajide, what else stood out for you from President Bola Tinubu's inauguration speech? Because some have said, oh, well, the normal things we hear on every inauguration day, and, it really didn't galvanize a whole lot of people. Well, but maybe you have a contrary view.
I'll tell you perhaps one reason why that didn't happen. It's a wise man once said, sometimes how you say it is as important as what you say. And I'll explain this to you. Now, based on the evidence from researchers that are into public speaking and communication, they say the ideal speaking speed should be 150 to 100, between 150 to 180 words per minute. They believe that if you speak at that speed, you'll be able to captivate the audience. You'll be able to keep the attention span of the audience. Please listen carefully to this. The fastest Democracy Day speech of President Buhari, his fastest reading speed across all his Democracy Day speeches was in 2016. In 2016, he read that Democracy Day speech at the speed of 100 words per minute. Don't forget, the global standard, expected standard, 150 to 180 words. President Buhari did 100 words in 2016. His slowest speech, he did it 2021, 88 words per minute. President Tinubu's reading speed in this speech, 68 words per minute. In other words, it was an extremely slow speech. President Tinubu's speech was slower than Buhari's slowest speech, Democracy Day speech. Buhari's, again, I repeat, President Buhari's slowest Democracy Day speech was in 2021. He read that speech at an average of 88 words per minute. In Tinubu's speech, his reading speed was extremely slow, 68 words per minute, compared to that standard that we expect, 150, 180 words per minute. And that's the reason why some people will listen to it. It had a lot of strong points, but a lot of those strong points were lost because his speech was delivered rather slowly.
So, which brings me to the next question again. Now, the president, Bola Tinubu, has said he wants to improve the quality of life of Nigerians, as it were. Is there a guaranteed approach in order to achieve this?
Nothing is guaranteed, but there's a fast approach. Let's take a look at where we were and where we are now, and to look at what President Tinubu needs to quickly do to achieve improving the quality of life for Nigerians. And if you take a look at where we were, looking at the quality of life indicators, 2015, minimum wage was 18,000 naira. With that minimum wage and the fuel price of 145 naira in 2015, if you choose to use all your minimum wage in 2015 to buy petrol, you will buy 120 liters. Now, minimum wage is 30,000 naira, but based on today's current rate, even if you choose to use all your minimum wage to buy petrol, you will not get up to 60 liters. In other words, 18,000 naira minimum wage had more value than today's 30,000 naira. Look at the unemployment, another key quality of living indicator. When the government came in, 29.2%. The last figures that we have for unemployment rate in 2019-2020, 56.1%. Based on the records from the National Bureau of Statistics, they say that never in our history, never has we seen a period where unemployment, including underemployment rate, has hit 56.1%. So one of the key priorities of President Tinubu has to be to improve the purchasing power of individuals and to also ensure that unemployment, including underemployment rates, are brought down. Let's look at the out-of-school children indicators. 2015, the World Bank said there were 16 million children out of school in Nigeria. Now the numbers are approximately 21 million children out of school. Health indicator, malaria is the biggest health indicator. Based on the World Bank, so based on the United Nations economic indicators, they say that approximately 54 million Nigerians had malaria in 2015, now 63 million Nigerians. In summary, here's why malaria, the indicator, is so important. Between Monday this week, when President Tinubu gave his inaugural speech, so tonight, where we are hopeful that he's listening, the indicator shows that approximately 3,000 Nigerians have died because of malaria in the first 1 week of President Bola Tinubu. Is that his fault? No, but that is our current running rate. What the president now needs to do is to ensure Nigerians' quality of living goes higher. How does he want to achieve this? Again, what will be his governance model? And if we take a look at the governance model of President Buhari, we'll be able to understand the challenges. First, domestic debt in 2015, when the government came in, 8.3 trillion naira. Our current domestic debt now 22 trillion naira. External debt, when the government came in, $7.3 billion. External debt now more than $37 billion. What about corruption? Based on Transparency International's report, when the government came in, corruption score was 2.6 over 10. Now, Ayo, the corruption score based on Transparency International's last report, they say corruption score is worse than what it was in 2015. The President Tinubu really has his work cut out for him.
Definitely, the president has his work cut out for him. Babajide Gusau, thank you so much again for your thoughts on the news at 10.
The pleasure is all mine, Ayo.
To another sector now, the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, NARD, or NARD, is asking President Bola Tinubu to declare a state of emergency in the nation's health sector to avert a total collapse. In a communique issued at the end of a 7-day conference, the association's president, Dr. Emeka Orji, asked the federal government to urgently address the brain drain plaguing the health sector. Recently, the relocation of several healthcare professionals from Nigeria to other countries has further stretched an already strained sector. Now, the resident doctors warn that a total collapse of the health sector is imminent if urgent steps are not taken by the federal government to address the brain drain issue. Well, the new administration has been asked to urgently tackle the nation's security challenges, which are preventing critical health services from reaching remote areas as a result of safety concerns for healthcare workers. That's according to the chairman, Faculty of Community Health, Bayero University, Kano, Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar. In setting an agenda for the new administration, Professor Abubakar told Channels Television's Ladia Keriduluale on our current affairs program Newsnight that many parts, particularly of northern Nigeria, remain inaccessible because of banditry and kidnappings.
Many of the things we would love to do within the health sector is not happening because of the security challenge. Moving from one state to another, in Northwest especially now, it's a problem. And so reaching people, especially in remote areas, with the right type of health services, health education inclusive, is not happening the way it should, because the roads leading to those places are not healthy. I mean, they are not possible for people to use for fear of the terrorists or insurgents or kidnappers or bandits, as they use various names to wreak a lot of havoc. So immunization is not reaching where it should. Health education, a lot needs to be done, but it is not possible because the roads are not safe for people to get there. So we are having a lot of challenges, and of course, this is not a positive development for the health sector. And as long as things cannot be improved upon in the aspect of security, the health sector will continue to have a lot of challenges that will worsen our health indices. This is one area that we are hoping that government will come in and help a lot so that health sector will benefit from the safety of all our areas, of all our remote areas, so that they will continue to function and provide services.
For the full interview with Professor Abubakar, do watch Newsnight tomorrow, Monday, June the 5th at 9 p.m. right here on Channels Television. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has appointed the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Kyomi Adesina, among the global leaders to tackle global malnutrition. Reacting on his Twitter handle, Dr. Adesina thanked Mr. Guterres for the honor and promised to help the League of Nations deliver on its global agenda. Set up back in 2010, the Scaling Up Nutrition movement continues its drive to improve nutrition for all people everywhere, with the stewardship of 22 appointed leaders committed to fighting malnutrition in all its forms. According to the United Nations, some 3 billion people cannot afford healthy diets, and 2/3 of children lack the diverse diets they need to thrive. The Provost of the Cathedral Church of Christ, Very Reverend Adebola Ojofetimi, has asked residents of Lagos to work for the unity of Christ and Nigeria as a whole. Very Reverend Ojofetimi, who was speaking during the post-inauguration Thanksgiving service for the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and his Deputy Quadri Hamzat, says Lagos must remain united for the collective goal of the country, while the Governor assured the people of an all-inclusive governance through his Themes Plus agenda in his second term.
It's the post-inauguration Thanksgiving service of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and Kadiri Hamzat's second-term administration at the Cathedral Church of Christ, Marina, Lagos Island. Former members of the Lagos State Executive Council and other dignitaries joined the governor and his deputy for the special service to usher in another 4 years of governance. As part of the service, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu takes the first reading of the Bible from Genesis 11, verse 1 to 9.
Now, the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make brick and bake them thoroughly." They used bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth."
The Provost of the Cathedral Church of Christ, Marina, centers his message on unity as a catalyst for godly possibilities.
The Trinity is the unity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit as three persons in one God. And this unity worked inseparably in creation. I want to charge all of us who are here present today, let us embrace the unity of the Trinity. Let us work for the unity of Lagos State. Let us work for the unity of Nigeria.
It's now time for Thanksgiving. On the sideline of the service, Governor Sanwo-Olu promises to deliver good governance to the people.
It will certainly be a second term that Lagosians should expect a lot more from us. What we had promised is a Teams Plus agenda, which is human-centric. We want to also build a better inclusive sense of governance, in which not only will we be doing a lot of hard infrastructure, but we also want to do a lot of soft infrastructure. Things that will touch, the life of our people, specifically palliatives that will bring succor and bring a better relief for our citizens.
The administration of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and his deputy Kadiri Hamzat has assured Lagosians that the next 4 years of their tenure will be beneficial to all.
The Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obis is advising the governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Otti, not to disappoint the expectations of those who elected him on March the 18th this year. Mr. Obi, who spoke during the Abia State Thanksgiving service held at the Abia State Township Stadium in Umuahia, urged the people of the state to pray for Nigeria at this critical time.
It's been a long time coming on the journey to the Abia Government House as this Thanksgiving service appears well in place. It's drawn up a congregation of the clergy, the Traditional Council, Christian Association of Nigeria, Gets, residents, and gaily dressed women group. Joining also is the Labour Party's presidential candidate in the last presidential election, Mr. Peter Obi. As part of the Thanksgiving service, there are two charges here. The proclamation over the state.
My prayer for everyone, for our state, and for everyone who came here, may the Lord bring wholeness to every area of your life. May the Lord bring wholeness to Abia. We will not just be a people that say this area is working, but this area is not working. But in the season, the Lord is going to grant us wholeness around.
Then this piece of advice to the man who many say have his job cut out for him.
Let the pensioners, let the retirees see that they once worked for Abia State. Let the civil servants see they are working for the state. Look at them. That is the grace God gave you. Do not abuse that grace, my brother. Today is Thanksgiving for you to start this job. I look forward that in 4 years, when you are looking for re-election, we'll come here for another Thanksgiving as happy as we are today, because the poor people are happy.
The governor makes these solemn pledges in his response.
Your Excellency, I have listened to your word of advice, and I can assure you that you will not be disappointed. We have come here to work for Abia people, and Abia people will work for. We've not come to work for big men. We believe that big men will always find their way. But the peasants, the farmers, the poor people all over the place, we have promised to lead them from poverty.
It's barely days since starting on his new job. Governor Otti sure knows he's got some work to do as the new Abia State Chief Executive.
Indeed, the 2023 general elections may have come and gone, but the ripples from that election are still being felt, especially at the various election petition tribunals across the country. There are some who are now calling for a review of the country's electoral reforms to allow the conclusion of electoral disputes before elected persons are sworn in. The Bishop of Anglican Diocese in Kaduna, Right Reverend Timothy Yahya, is the latest to add his voice to the debate, and he's asking the federal government to henceforth hands off the appointment of the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. The bishop, who was speaking to journalists on the sidelines of the Synod of the Anglican Diocese of Kaduna, is also asking the Nigeria Judicial Council to appoint retired judges as members of election petition tribunals to reduce the workload of serving judges and speed up the process.
No INEC chairman should be appointed by government anymore. Ask civil societies to come together and to fashion how we can get an INEC chairman. Number two, we must make sure that nobody is sworn in this country except election cases are terminated. And therefore, in Synod, we suggested if presidential election take place in 6 weeks, all matters that have to do with presidential election should be terminated. We did election in February, and we are still in the preliminary stage of the matters of election. National Assembly, the same thing, February. As if there is something Number two, we want to ensure that electronic voting is the in thing, because it will reduce the corruption in INEC. The amount of money we use for conducting election, India is 1 billion people. Go and check how much they use for election. How many are we? 200 million people. We spend 3 times the money of India. Something somewhere is wrong. And therefore, if we do this, we eliminate. And another suggestion we have is all the justices and judges that are serving must never be taken to Election Tribunal. We have retired justices and judges. They should be brought in together. For 180 days after election in this country, all civil litigations and criminal litigations are always on holiday until tribunals finish. What kind of a country are we in? When you delay somebody's justice for 180 days, justice delayed is justice denied. This is our suggestion to the government. Let us make sure there is a total overhaul of the electoral process.
To some news, and at least 10 people have been killed by armed bandits in Sakidar, Magaji and Jangbako communities of Maradun local government area in Zamfara state after launching an attack in the localities on Saturday. Several other persons sustained various injuries. In his reaction, the Zamfara state governor, Dauda Lawal, condemned Saturday's attack, which he describes as barbaric and unprovoked aggression against innocent people, promising that his administration will not let criminality thrive. In the meantime, the troops of Operation Hadarin Daji have neutralized 5 terrorists that perpetrated the attacks on the communities. Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the NDLEA, have set ablaze over 3 tons of psychotropic substances located in Iwe Forest in Iwe community of Owan West local government area in Edo State. But the agency operatives in their hundreds stormed a large warehouse in the forest to carry out the exercise, following intelligence that a wanted drug kingpin had stored the substances for onward distribution to parts of the country. Meanwhile, about 76.9 kilograms of Canadian Loud, a synthetic strain of cannabis, were recovered at the Port Harcourt Ports Complex, One in River State. The operatives of the NDLEA also recovered 390 kilograms of illicit drugs in Kano, Kaduna, Borno and Oyo states, following raids carried out in these states as part of efforts to curtail drug trafficking and abuse in the country. Governor Yahaya Bello says he is optimistic that the All Progressives Congress will retain power in Kogi State after the November 2023 governorship election. Governor Bello was speaking in Lokoja, the Kogi State capital, while presenting the deputy governorship candidate of the party, Joel Salifu, to the public. The governor notes that his administration has performed creditably in the areas of provision of infrastructure, quality education, health, among others, to seek votes from the electorate in the state.
The glass hall of the Kogi State Government House in Lokoja is filled to capacity as Governor Yahaya Bello is set to unveil the deputy governorship candidate of the APC ahead of the November 2023 governorship election in the state. Leaders of trade unions and lawmakers in attendance throw their weight around the governorship candidate of the APC, Mr. Ahmed Adodo, and his running mate, Mr. Joel Salifu.
I assure you that the entire teachers of Kogi State will galvanize their vote, will make sure that they support APC from the beginning up to the end during the election.
I want to call on my people in Kogi West. This is the best for us. I say this is the best for us. And I want to tell you, we should all go out and vote for this ticket. Our own time will come.
However, there is a call for caution.
The output of your support for our candidates and our party will show after 11th November 2023. So it is not how much picture you snap with Ododo that shows you will bring the numbers.
Salifu. And the governor himself.
Presenting Mr. Joel Salifu to the party, Governor Yahaya Bello tasks members and supporters on the need for grassroots mobilization for the APC.
This is a divine project. Key in and be part of it and share in the glory. Call your supporters to key in and desist from certain comments that will put you in trouble tomorrow. Because you cannot stop this victory.
The governor believes the APC will gain the lead as political parties in the state strategize on how to woo the electorate ahead of the election.
And now to the arts. Nature's Muse is a solo exhibition by Khalid Balogun at Jelusimi Art Center in Lagos. This young artist shows his passion and love for nature by capturing interesting landscapes and sceneries. We'll see it on Art Review tonight.
The Jelusimi Art Center in Lagos plays host to multi-talented Khalid Balogun as this floral landscape artist and poet presents his debut exhibition, Nature's Muse, a way to spread joy, laughter and peace while drawing attention to the ills in society.
This is my first exhibition titled Nature's Muse because, as you can see, I use nature as reference here. So I'm a floral landscape artist and I find happiness and energy in drawing natural objects.
The black frame pieces house over 30 drawings that reveal nature at its best and captures the artist's childhood memories, which he brings to life through this solo show using a preferred medium, but is open to try new things.
For now, I actually stick with charcoal and graphite and colored pencils. I initially started with just graphite, but now I'm experimenting more mediums. Like you see some of my works, I actually use pastel also. So I'm experimenting and I'll get to use more mediums.
The works are cool. He's drawing inspiration from nature, which we all part of nature, and I like the way he draws inspiration from nature. Trying to portray water in different forms and sunlight in different shades. I think I love the combination of the pencil and the charcoal. I think they are breathtaking. They are breathtaking works.
The uniqueness of these pieces springs from how he captures the different sceneries, especially the waterfalls, which depict a lot of energy.
I love waterfall because that's what really gives me. I like the energy, watching nature shower so much goodness and endless. You never see waterfall dry up. It's endless goodness. So that's why I do waterfall. I'm majorly known for waterfall art, but I also do sunset series like the Tales of the Sun, like I put it. And all my works, you see a poem embedded. I have poems that follow all my works that make you to understand what I'm trying to do better.
This young artist is still evolving and showing loads of prospects going by the images seen in this exhibition.
Fighters opposed to the government in Moscow say they have captured some Russian soldiers during a cross-border raid into southern Russia and would hand them over to Ukrainian authorities. The Russian Volunteer Corps made the claim in a video statement released on Telegram in the wake of a raid into the Russian region of Belgorod. Belgorod's top official replied to say he had agreed to meet the men's captors if the soldiers were still alive. But later, the fighter said that the governor, the corps member in the video, said Gladkov had not turned up at the designated meeting place. Now, the corps, along with fighters from Freedom of Russia Legion, has claimed responsibility for a spate of attacks inside Russian territory, including last week when Moscow said 2 civilians were killed during fighting. But there has been a spate of attacks in Belgorod recently. Rescue operations have ended at the site of India's rail accident And focus is now turned to the cause of what is described as the country's deadliest rail crash in more than 2 decades. Preliminary findings suggest that a signal fault may have led to the rail disaster in the eastern state of Odisha that left 275 people dead. And that's according to India's railway minister, who cites a change in electronic interlocking as likely cause. The minister later said the cause and people responsible for the deadly 3-train crash in eastern India had been identified, but then didn't give any details. India's railway board said there had been some kind of signaling interference rather than failure. Meanwhile, the report into India's worst rail accident this century is due later. Well, the crash saw a passenger train collide with a stationary goods train and derailed after being wrongly directed onto a loop track by the side of the main line. And the main news again. The federal government today agreed to set up a tripartite committee to study the dynamics of the minimum wage. This stand was announced at the end of the meeting between the federal government representatives and the Trade Union Congress over the removal of fuel subsidy. Well, the Congress is, however, asking for a reversal of prices while discussions continue. That's the news at 10 tonight. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Many thanks for watching. Do have a good night.